Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the Boxhard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the Boxhard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 36 of the Boxhard Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Coastman. I'm joined, as always, by Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joey. How are you?
Very good, very good. Now, there really is nowhere else to start this week. It's been an absolutely huge loss to the boxing world. It's the greatest loss possible from the greatest heavyweight boxer, definitely, but possibly boxer in any weight class, pound for pound boxer of all time. We've lost the great Muhammad Ali. He died on Saturday morning England time, I believe. I think it was Friday night, perhaps, in USA. Of course, there's a time difference. Of course, he died at age 74. So this week has been really, sad week for boxing fans and boxing people and even other boxers all around the world. Everybody you speak to, there's always been that debate about, who'd win, prime Mike Tyson against prime Muhammad Ali. That will still go on. That will still go on. We've done the show a day earlier, so we're recording this actually on the Sunday. So it's literally 24 hours, just over 24 hours since I heard the news. I woke up to a text on my phone, and of course, it's absolutely tragic. So it's gutting. Of course, he had a wonderful career, 61 fights, 56 wins, 37 by knockout, 5 losses, only 1 loss coming by knockout. He'd done the unthinkable. This man was the greatest, not just because of his in the ring achievements, but the stuff he done outside of the ring, but of course, as a lot of people will know, the stuff he done inside the ring was unthinkable. It was impossible. And that is, that the stuff he done in the ring put him on that pedestal to be able to do things and say things and speak up for himself. And, he was just a leader, of course. The fight that really made him, the man he became was that 1964 win over Sonny Liston when Sonny Liston retired at the end of the 6th round on his stool, claiming an injured shoulder. After the fight, Muhammad Ali, at the time called Cassius Clay, changed his name to Muhammad Ali. That was the 1964 fight of the year. They had an instant rematch in 1965, and Sonny Liston got knocked out in the first round. There was only 2,400 people in attendance that night. It's crazy to think the way that the landscape of boxing has changed, and he was really the man to change it. From then onwards, people would come out for boxing. He was the most exciting thing that anybody'd ever seen. That back in those times when TVs were new then, and everybody was seeing this man with a big mouth, back up what he would say what round he was going to knock someone out in, and he'd do it. He was just the most exciting thing. Of course, he come over here, beat our very own Henry Cooper. He had an absolutely golden resume. Those 3 fights with Joe Frazier, incredible fights, all 3 of them. The fights with Floyd Patterson, the fights with Ken Norton, all good fights, and of course, the thriller in Manila. He had the brilliant fight where he done the rope-a-dope on George Foreman. That was the Rumble in the Jungle in Africa. And of course, just an absolute credit to the sport. He really was. He fought Larry Holmes. We had Larry Holmes on the show before. Larry Holmes couldn't speak enough good words about Muhammad. That's the weird thing. A lot of people fought Muhammad. So many fighters fought him. George Foreman, Joe Frazier, they all fought him. They all had rivalries. They all said derogatory stuff about each other in build-ups to fights, and it was genuine. It wasn't just for the cameras. It wasn't just to get a few more bums on seats. It was simply genuine, and yet they all speak of how much of a great man he was. He's done so much things in in outside of the ring. He's done so much things. He's freed hostages. He sat down and negotiated with Saddam Hussein himself. What sort of boxer would do that? He freed 15 hostages, 15 American hostages, and when they tried to thank him, he said, "Listen, it's not me. God works through people. It's not me you have to thank." He's talked a suicidal man out of jumping out of a window. The man was. I've said this for a long time. I'm not just saying this because of the circumstances that have occurred. I'm saying this because I truly mean it. Muhammad Ali was more than one of the best boxers of all time, one of the best athletes of all time, sportsmen of all time, one of the best men to ever walk the world in our era that we know about. Of course, there's a lot of nice people that we don't know about, but I'm talking about famous terms. This man was king of the world, yet he was such a nice man. The things he'd do is sensational. He was a leader. He was a god. This man was a god. This man stood up for his beliefs, like a lot of others did as well. Let's have it right. But he jeopardized his his status, and it didn't pay off because they took his titles away. They took his license away. He didn't fight for 3 years of his prime. We never really got to see the best 3 years of Muhammad Ali. We lost that because he refused to go to Vietnam. He stood up for his beliefs. He said he wasn't going to do it. And the things he done for especially the black community in America, he's from a time where black people couldn't vote. Black people were second citizens, and he done so much for that race. It's absolutely incredible. Muhammad Ali really is the greatest of all time, in my opinion. The memories, the things he's done. He's achieved more than probably every single person in the world right now could do in 10 lifetimes. He was amazing. I'm sorry for those people that are maybe not too big on him. I've spent quite a few minutes now talking about it. It's just he's my hero, and that's just the views of the Boxhard podcast. We've really lost one of the greatest boxer of all time, and it's really kind of, even though we didn't know him, I never got to see him in the flesh or anything. His last professional fight was over a decade before I was born. But, I know so much about the guy. I've spent hours upon hours of watching his interviews, all the quotes he'd say. He was just tremendous. He was one of a kind. They don't make people like that anymore. I'm not sure how solid this is, but I did hear that his organs had given way when he was in the hospital. They'd given way and they'd stopped working, yet his heart was still beating for a further 30 minutes. And apparently that's never really been seen. That's a huge rarity. So that goes to show maybe something, obviously there was something special about the man, even when his body, and his life was ready to be handed over to God. So absolutely incredible. If you haven't watched any of the interviews on him, you really have to. I actually do want to just add, I spoke to his grandson, who's also a boxer, just yesterday, and I just said, basically, he was a true role model. He was a incredible human being. He was a man that stood up for his beliefs, and he was a leader. But he will always be a hero, and he's never to be forgotten. And I think that pretty much states what's gone on. Very nice touch yesterday from Frank Warren at the boxing as well. I will just say, Frank Warren, there was an allocation of seats. If you turned up, you'd get a seat for £5, and all the money that was raised with the £5 tickets were going to a Parkinson's research charity. That's of course the disease that Muhammad Ali had, Parkinson's. And also Frank Warren done the 10 bells in between two fights. I think it was the main event. They done the 10 bells for Muhammad Ali. They played some of his famous rhymes that he'd use in press conferences, and of course they had a solid black rope on the top rope of the ring, no sponsor on it or anything like that, and that was a mark of respect to Muhammad Ali. So really good touches, really class stuff there from Frank Warren, and I think he should be commended for that. So that's it. We're gonna leave that there. How hard it is to stop talking about the greatest man to ever lace on a pair of gloves. We're going to leave that there, and we're going to delve into part one. Ayaz, was there anything that you wanted to say on Muhammad Ali just before I bring in, just before we start onto part one, of course, onto the review side of the show?
Yeah, on to add, he's the greatest sporting icon that we've had. And also, just to add on, obviously, having studied a sports journalism degree, right? I actually on a lot of my essays, I actually wrote on Muhammad Ali. What he's done in the civil rights movement was amazing, right? He also even threw his Olympic gold medal in the river because he said, I don't want to wear a medal that's a country where people are not getting treated right."
Yeah, that's absolutely true. He again, I could talk about it all day, and this perhaps this boxing show isn't the place to do so. But I don't want to carry on for too long. But yeah, he was, there's no question about it. The man was the best. Go and watch his fight against Cleveland Williams. Go and watch that fight, the masterclass that he put on, and tell me that Mike Tyson would have beat Muhammad Ali. I ain't just saying this because he's passed away now. I'm not. But I'm definitely, Ayaz, when you're ready, we're going to go down to that O2 Ali exhibition. We definitely need to go and see that before it goes. I believe it goes in about a month and a half, 2 months. I think it's August. They're changing it to some other exhibition. So definitely we need to get down there before that. Okay, now let's jump straight into the review side of the show. We're going to start with a card that I didn't actually know was taking place until the last minute. I spoke to him just after the fight, actually. Billy Dibb, he was back. He got his 41st professional win of his 45 professional fights. He picked up the vacant IBF Australasian. Imagine that. It's called the Australasian Super Featherweight title. He beat a guy who was 17-0 undefeated called Farampech Buamus, 17-0. So Billy Dibb getting ever closer to another shot at one of the major titles. That's it for Australia. We're now going to go over to Florida, USA. Rances Bartholomew, top of the bill against Mickey Bay. This was always going to be a good fight. Bartholomew was down in round 2. And I haven't actually seen the fight, I'll be honest, but it ended up being a split decision win for Bartholomew. So I'd imagine that fight was pretty good. I believe that Mickey Bay had a really, really good start, and Bartholomew was taking over in the latter part of the fight. He was coming forward a lot more, so I've heard. Also on that bill, Gervonta the Tank Davis, he picked up a KO in the first round. It was only scheduled for 8. No judges were needed. He now moves to 16-0, so good fighter, Gervonta Davis. That's it for that one. We're now going to go over to Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Just one fight I wanted to mention on that bill. Heavyweight prospect Cassius Chaney moved to 7-0 with a unanimous decision over 4 rounds. That's it for there. We're now going to go over to Canada. Artur Beterbiev, 9 wins, 9 knockouts. He was fighting Ezekiel Osvaldo Moderna, who had a record of 23 wins, 2 losses. He'd never been stopped. Well, he has been stopped now, and it came in the 4th round. Moderna was down twice and deducted a point in the 3rd round. So that was going to be, what's that, 10-8, 10-6 round, the 3rd round. And he was down twice in the 4th round before the referee stopped it. So he needed a knockout pretty much after round 4 with all the stuff that was going on there. So really, really bad fight for Moderna. And of course, Artur Beterbiev getting closer to a title shot. He defended successfully here his WBA, NABA light heavyweight title. So 10-0 with 10 knockouts for Artur Beterbiev. Also on that bill, undefeated Colombian heavyweight prospect Oscar Rivas. He moved to 19-0 with a win over Jeremy Bates. This was a TKO in the 1st round, so a good win for Oscar Rivas. Elsewhere, I'm not too sure where it took place, but I just thought I'd mention it's very ironic, of course, Muhammad Ali, we lost him just over 24 hours ago. There was actually a guy fighting on Saturday, and his name was Ali Muhammad. So that's a quite a coincidence. It was his debut, and he picked up a TKO in the 2nd round. I'm not sure where this fight took place. It could have been somewhere like Asia or something, I believe. There's a lot of Asian sounding names on this bill, so somewhere in the world, Ali Muhammad, who probably doesn't speak a word of English, is getting a mention on the Boxhard podcast. So it's all good. Now going over to Germany, we're going to talk about a fight that happened over here. Manuel Charr I believe he was put on the bill pretty late. He picked up a TKO in the 7th round. It was scheduled for 8. Heavyweight, of course, Manuel Charr moves to 29 wins and he's got the 4 losses. His opponent had a record of 12-7 going into this one, of course, now 12-8. That's it for Germany. We're now going to go over to the Echo Arena, Liverpool. Ryan Farag against Karim Guerfi. Now, this was always going to be quite a good fight. A bit of beef at the head-to-head, and Ryan Farag was TKO'd in the 3rd round. It was a bit of an upset. This was, of course, for the EBU bantamweight title, so Farag has lost that belt. Farag was down prior to the stoppage. He got back up, but he was in trouble. His legs were just walking on their own, kind of thing. They were jelly. He didn't know where he was. Well, I think he knew where he was on the top half, but the bottom half had no. He thought he was in a dancing contest or something. He was in a bad way. I don't mean that in any disrespect whatsoever. Also on the bill, Liam Smith. He defended successfully his WBO World Super Welterweight title with a KO in the 2nd round. He moves to 23 wins undefeated with the 1 draw. His opponent, Predrag Radcevic, 30 wins and 1 loss going into this fight. He hadn't been stopped in that 1 loss, but he now has his first knockout loss. Zolani Tete was also on the bill. He picked up a TKO in the 7th round and defended successfully his IBF International Bantamweight title. So Zolani Tete 24-3 now. His opponent 21 wins and 6 losses now. Thomas Stalker was also on the bill, fighting for the WBO European title for the 3rd time. It was vacant and he picked up the win now. This is the 3rd time lucky. It was a tough fight, I tell you that. Tom Stalker, of course, he actually picked up a cut on his right eye in the 8th round, I believe. Antonio Bento, his opponent, was cut on the left eye in the 4th round, but that was from a head clash. Bento was down in the 6th round. Tom Stalker did have a good start, but I tell you what, this guy really came to fight for a record that didn't suggest he had much fight in him. He really did. His record, 30 wins. Well, his record now, 30 wins, 16 losses and 2 draws. Tom Stalker now 11 wins, 1 loss and 3 draws. So the new WBO European lightweight title, Tom Stalker. Declan Geraghty was also on the bill. He picked up his 12th professional win. His opponent got disqualified. Basically, 2 points were deducted from his opponent for hitting on the break. And of course, he was disqualified in the 6th round after continuous low blows. Geraghty was actually down in the 2nd round, so it was a bit of a strange old fight over 6 rounds. His opponent's now got a record of 28 wins, 17 losses and 2 draws, but he really come to make it ugly. Eusebio Usejo. So Declan Geraghty 12-1 now. Liam Williams was also on this bill. He got a TKO in the 3rd round. It was only scheduled for 8, so he moves to 14-0 with the 1 draw. His opponent Gustavo Alberto Sanchez, 12-13 with 1 draw, was down in the 2nd round and again in the 3rd just prior to the stoppage. Kevin Satchell was also on the bill. He picked up a points win over Brett Fido. Kevin Satchell now 16-0. Josh Leather moved to 10-0 with a TKO in the 3rd round. His opponent was down in the 1st round as well. That's it for UK. We're now going to go over to the StubHub Center, Carson, California, one of the best venues in boxing, in my opinion. Top of the bill, Francisco Vargas defending his WBC World Super Featherweight title against tricky veteran Orlando Salido, the only man to hold a win over Lomachenko. Francisco Vargas, it was a good fight by all accounts. Again, I'll be honest, I haven't seen it, but it was a good fight from what I've heard. It was a majority draw. A lot of people saying that wasn't the right decision. It was definitely a close one. I'm going to have to give that a watch. But Francisco Vargas, of course, retains that title because he didn't lose it, so he retains it, and that's his 2nd draw of his career, and Salido's 4th draw of his career. Julian Ramirez was also on the bill. He got upset by Abraham Lopez. Both guys were undefeated. Ramirez was cut on his right eye by an accidental headbutt. But yeah, Abraham Lopez picks up the win, so 21-0 for him with the one draw, and Julian Ramirez 16-1. Gabriel Rosado was also on the bill. He was down in the fourth round, unbelievably, but he managed to scrape a unanimous decision win after 10 rounds. So Gabriel Rosado 23-9 now. Jonathan Navarro was also on the bill. He put his man down in the first round and the second round, and it was stopped in the second round. KO. Jonathan Navarro moves to 6-0. So good win for him. And that's it for the StubHub Center. We're now going to go over to Wisconsin. Of course, we had him on our show last week, Luis Arias. He picked up a TKO in the third round over Jorge Silva. So Luis Arias, 15-0 now. Moving on to bigger and better things. Okay, of course, we talked about Muhammad Ali earlier on in the show. Rest in peace, my brother. And we've just done the review inside of the show. So we're now going to welcome our first guest. Okay, now it's time for our first guest on this week's show. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome undefeated heavyweight prospect Cassius Chaney. Cassius, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you for having me.
No problem. Okay, the first question I wanted to ask you, obviously, your first name is Cassius. You're named Cassius. Were you named after Muhammad Ali?
Yes, I was named after Muhammad Ali, a.k.a. Cassius Clay.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the first real question, obviously, this is the last few days have been terrible for boxing fans. We've suffered a great loss. What's your reaction to the loss of the greatest, Cassius?
It was a bit shocking, but at the same time, he's in a better place now. I fought on the night that he passed. It was my first fight in Philadelphia. You just met so much to the world, people in general, all people. And he stood up for what he believed in. You don't really see that in sports in general anymore, that much. So, as an athlete, as a professional athlete, as a person, you want to carry along many of his traits. And that's what I plan to do, just to, not only in the ring, but outside the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of course, you said you fought on the same night. You got a win. Funny enough, somewhere else I'm not sure which country it was, I was looking on BoxRec, and someone called Ali Muhammad had his debut on that night and managed to get a second round knockout, which was quite funny. We mentioned that earlier on in the show. Now, of course, you fought on Friday night against Raymond Lopez. You beat him over 4 rounds. Winning every round.
Yeah.
I think you haven't even lost a round professionally yet. How did it feel in there, Cassius, going of course, the 4 rounds and beating him every round?
It felt good. I had a long camp. I had about I only fought a 4-rounder. I had a nice long camp. I hurt my hand in the first round, but I just mentally, I knew that I could go through it. My trainer, Calvin Davis, who also trains Amir Mansour, he hurt his hand and maybe his 6th professional fight. So throughout the course of the training camp, he was telling me these stories. So when I hurt my hand in the first round, that was something that popped in my mind. Like people say, when you're in the ring, you always want to look back on something that can get you through. And that was my little bit of adversity early on in my boxing career. But I felt like he was a durable guy. You can tell he was a sort of an MMA type of guy too, because his head was so hard. But I felt that I did well. I felt that I had a lot of energy going into the 4th round, and I've improved.
Is the injury serious at all, or is it just a knock on the night?
Well, I had an X-ray yesterday. It was just a bit of I believe it's just a good jam. It was no fracture, thank goodness. But it's around in my knuckle area, my middle knuckle. So hopefully, by the end of this week, the swelling will be down, and I'll be able to. I'll know more about it. It's just so swollen right now that I don't even think really the X-rays could determine anything significant. But I don't think it's a fracture. I just think hopefully it's just a good jam.
you fought in 3 different countries now, including the UK. What was that experience like for you coming over to the UK, and how did it all occur? It was just crazy. Like, I think it was your 4th fight?
Yeah, it was my 4th fight. I'm very independent. I got into this sport and understanding that I got into it I was about 23, 20, 22 years old. So I knew that I had to be proactive in a lot of the things that I wanted to learn. So me getting over to Tyson Fury's camp, it started just from, I think, an interview with Adam Noble. And he said, he would, get in contact with Peter Fury. Peter invited me over, for the first month, the fight was postponed. I asked that if they want me to stay for an extra month, which they did, that they get me a fight while I'm there. And they made it happen. They went and found an opponent for me to fight there. So it was a bit different because at the same time I wanted to fight. At the same time, I was there, but you're there sparring. You're not really training for your own fight. So I had to go from like sparring to getting into fight mode, which was good for me because they say you don't want to become a sparring partner. You want to get used to just sparring. So me having a fight over there was a big deal. Was really a great experience for me.
Now, I don't know, at this moment, I'm not too sure what fighters you've sparred or anything like that, but obviously you now know that was obviously Fury's biggest fight at the time. He's now the heavyweight world champ. Did you learn a lot in that camp? Did you perhaps learn more than you've learned, in any other camps at all?
It was a little bit different as far as you over there, you're sparring, but you have to spar Huey too. So you learn that they come as a package together. So while you're there, you have to spar both of them. I will say that he trains hard when it's time for him to train. You get what I mean? Tyson, he does train hard when it's time for him to train. He has a unique style. But I've learned in pretty much every single camp. Every camp has been different. Amir Mansour's, Eric Molina's. I've helped Gerald Washington, so everybody's a little bit different. But I will say that over there it was a great experience.
Yeah, just you mentioned Eric Molina there. He's been on the show a few times. Good friend of the show. I just wanted to touch on there. You said that you've obviously done round sparring with Hughie Fury. He's also obviously an undefeated prospect like yourself. What's your opinion on Hughie Fury? Do you think he could go all the way to the top or what?
I think so. I think Hughie can go, as far as he, decides he wants to go. It's an interesting dynamic right now happening in the heavyweight division. Pretty much you can, you might not fight really good guys until you're at the 20-0 mark. You know what I mean? I will say that something I'm learning with Hughie, with Tyson, with Anthony Joshua, Wilder, certain things that they don't have to deal with. They just gotta train and stay on the right path, and they'll be okay. Hopefully, by next year I'm in that mix, and I can get in the ring with all those guys.
Yeah, of course. Now, I wanted to ask you about a couple of fights that are coming up in the heavyweight division. I wanted to get your opinion on them. Of course, the rematch between Fury and Klitschko. How do you see that one going, Cassius?
Oh, man. Honestly, I think Klitschko looking at it from a do or die. I think he's going to come out and be very, very aggressive. It might be, it has the potential to be maybe the fight of the year, depending on if Tyson can take some of Klitschko's shots and dig deep inside. So, I would just say that, I just hope it's a good fight. I don't really want to give a prediction on it because I do know the Furies, and I was invited to the Klitschko camp. So I just want to say that, I just hope it's a good fight and may the best man win.
Okay. And also Anthony Joshua against Dominic Breazeale. A lot of people this side of the water not too happy with this. They're saying that, Breazeale's only going to probably last 2 rounds. Do you share that opinion? Do you think he's got any chance against Joshua?
I think he has a chance. I think he does have a puncher's chance. But I do think that he's there to be hit, because he fights small. He doesn't fight like a tall guy. But that's an interesting fight too, because Dominic Breazeale isn't scared to kind of fight inside a little bit, and he's going to weigh a lot. I think that's what helped him with Amir Mansour. When Amir hurt him, he weighed so much that he could take that punch. He could get up and weather the storm. So I do feel like it's going to be an interesting fight. I just think that Breazeale, if he's in camp training like he's the fight tall, it'll be more interesting.
Yeah. Now, in the US, there is a shed load of American heavyweights. Obviously, a lot of them further on in their careers, like, there's just absolutely loads of them. Breazeale, you mentioned Washington, Eric Molina, Travis Kaufman, loads of guys on that kind of fringe sort of contender level. Is there anybody that you've got your eye on? I know that it's early on in your career, you're only 7 fights in, but is there anyone that you've got your eye on for the future? Any one or two names at all?
All of them. All of them. They're a bit older than me. They're a bit, deeper in their careers than me. And but I would say pretty much, everybody. I think eventually, the same way I'm looking at them, guys are going to be looking at me to challenge me. So, you can't not take anybody into account. I would just say, with Gerald, me and Gerald are good friends. So the same with Eric Molina, we talk a lot. So that might play a factor in regards to those guys. But pretty much anybody else is pretty much a go. And I only talked to like 3 guys. Eric Molina, Gerald Washington, and Amir Mansour. So, but everybody else is pretty much a go. You want to stay on them. But I do wish a lot of these guys good luck coming up the ranks. I'm good friends with Charles Martin. And, hopefully, a lot of these guys stay healthy and they bounce back.
Yeah, of course. Now, the last question I've got for you before we let you go, Cassius, where do you see yourself in a realistic world, perhaps in the next 18 months' time? So basically the end of 2017, maybe the beginning of 2018. Realistically, where do you see yourself in the heavyweight division?
I'm hoping to be fighting for at least one of these, minor titles to get me in the world rankings, and then, once I'm in those world rankings, it's pretty much go time. I just feel like, if you look at some of these rankings, some of these guys in the rankings, they're not even really, they don't really want to fight, top guys. They don't really want to fight the next top guy, some of these guys, and it's just so interesting to see when you look at Luis Ortiz, who was the top guy. You don't really see guys calling him out, but if you call him out and you go get him, then boom, if you're able to get him, that puts you, on that top pedestal. You know what I mean? It's like, the business side of it is kind of controlling in the sense that guys are taking their times a little bit. But, I hope to get in the world rankings of one of these organizations by next year. And, and then from there, I'll take on anybody. I won't, I'll prepare right. I'll take on anybody. I'm only going to get better as I keep going on with this. So, there's no fear in that regard.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you say that. Of course, when you're coming up, you've only got one chance to start off. You've got to sort of build your CV in the right way, because once you get to that level, there's no really going back. So I'm happy to hear you say that you're sort of going to pace yourself, but if a shot comes up, you're definitely going to pounce on it. It's smart to hear you say that, Cassius. Okay, well, yeah. Just before I let you go, I just wanted to say it's been a pleasure having you on the show this week. We wish you the best of luck for the future, and no doubt we'll speak again soon, Cassius.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So everybody over there, thank you, and have a good day.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the preview part where we preview the fights coming up this weekend. We're going to start with a card taking place on the Friday at York Hall. I believe that ringside tickets for this fight are £60, so that's very cheap. Of course, it's not, there's no massive, fantastic fights on this bill. There are a couple actually, but there's no, it's not full of huge names. There's a lot of guys, prospects that are just coming up, but there will be some good fights on the bill. So if anybody can get down there, I believe it's still £60 for ringside, which is a good price. We're going to start down the undercard. I'm going to start with the first fight. Anthony Yarde. This is his 7th professional fight. He's got a record at the moment of 6-0. His opponent yet to be announced. But Anthony Yarde, boy oh boy, Ayaz, doesn't he look good?
Yeah, he definitely does look good. He's probably the next big prospect.
Yeah, definitely. He looks fantastic on the pads. He's knocking people out early, and I'm excited to see him fight on Friday. This fight will be aired on Box Nation. Also on the bill, Mitchell Smith. He looks to bounce back from that loss to Jules Jupp in the back end of 2015. So Mitchell Smith 13-1. He's in an 8-rounder. His opponent yet to be announced. Tom Baker also on the bill. He looks to move to 14-0. His opponent yet to be announced. We need to get some sort of announcement on the opponents soon, because there's a few guys on here without opponents. But the main fight, the main event on this bill, Enzo Macronelli, 41 wins and 7 losses. He faces Dmytro Kucha, 23 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw. This is for the vacant EBU Cruiserweight European title. So Enzo Macronelli, this fight was actually supposed to be, Oval McKenzie was supposed to get this shot, but it's ended up being Enzo Mac, because I believe there's an injury. I think there's an injury at the moment that Oval McKenzie is nursing. So what do you think about this fight, Ayaz? Because Enzo, of course, is coming off of that big win in December last year against Roy Jones Jr. He KO'd a legend, and he was only I believe he was the 5th man to KO Roy Jones in his 70-something fight career. So a good win there, of course. But, it's a well past his best, Roy Jones. And he's out here with a bit of momentum, I'd imagine, 6 months later to face Dmytro Kucha. And, of course, Dmytro Kucha only the 1 loss on his record. He's never been stopped. And he lost to Ilunga Makubu, of course, the guy who Tony Bellew beat last weekend for the world title. And apparently this was a fight that Kucha should have actually got the nod. Makabu, I should say, won this fight majority decision. So a very tough sounding opponent here. And of course, Kucha, last fight he was involved in was a split draw. It was some very, very strange scorecards, but it was a split draw, and it was for the vacant EBU Cruiserweight title. So this is the second fight on the bounce that Kucha is fighting for this title. So he definitely wants to win it. And he's coming to York Hall, of course, the traditional York Hall, to fight Enzo Mac. So he's serious about winning this. Again, I haven't seen so much of Kucha, but from his 23 wins, he's got 17 knockouts. But yeah, the 2 blemishes on his record, which was a loss and a draw, a very highly disputed loss, and the draw I didn't see, but it was, as I say, a split draw. So it'd be very interesting. That will be a good fight, and I really, really hope that Enzo Macronelli can do the business. Of course, we've had him on this show. Very, very, very nice guy. He deserves it, of course. Now that's it for York Hall. We're now going to go over to the Los Angeles Badminton Club, California, USA. Denis Shafikov's on this bill in his 40th professional fight. He looks to pick up his 37th win. It's an 8-rounder against a guy called Samuel Amooku, who has a record of 21 wins and 11 losses. Moving down that bill, Joel Diaz Jr., 21-0. His opponent yet to be announced. He's a good prospect. We've got to look out for him. He's no relation to the trainer, Joel Diaz, the one who was looking after, of course, Timothy Bradley before Teddy Atlas took over Timothy Bradley. No relation whatsoever. But Joel Diaz Jr., really, really good prospect. Promising for sure. Now that's it for California. We're now going to go over to New York. Top of the bill. This is a really, really good card, by the way. In fact, we're not going to start top of the bill. We're going to start with the bottom of the bill. Willie Monroe Jr., of course, former opponent of Gennady Golovkin. 19 wins, 2 losses. He's in a 10-rounder against John Thompson. That's the guy that Liam Smith beat for the WBO World Light Middleweight title, the Super Welterweight title. John Thompson, 17-2. So 19-2 against 17-2. This will actually be a good fight. I think Willie Monroe Jr. perhaps will probably get the win here, but it's going to be a good fight. Dejan Zlatikanin, 21-0, of course, the guy that beat Ricky Burns. He's facing Franklin Mamani, 21-2 with the one draw. This is for Zlatikanin's interim WBC World Lightweight title, so he's going to probably get another defense of this one. And there's a huge bang up on the bill. I like to see this. It's going to be a real fight. A lot of people saying it's going to be fight of the year before they've even seen it. Ayaz, Ruslan Provodnikov, 25-4 against John Molina Jr., 28-6. Now these guys can really punch. These guys have been in proper wars. Both of them have fought Matisse, and it's been real good fights. How do you think this fight's going to go, Ayaz? It's definitely going to be a war. It's one of those, it's just going to be a war. It ain't going to be a bore fest. They can't have bore fests, these two guys.
Yeah, what you're saying is true. It's going to be a war. Well, obviously, we've seen Provodnikov in huge wars. Like, for example, he's fought Matisse, he's got in a war with him, and obviously he's fought other fighters as well. So I reckon this fight is going to be a war, and it's not going to be a knockout. It's going to go to a points win.
Yeah, I think the judges, they can have a little break for this fight for 36 minutes. It won't even go that long. It might be 5 minutes. We just don't know. I know that John Molina Jr., of course, fighting out of the Goosen gym with the likes of Joe Goosen. He actually had, when he fought Matisse, that was, I think, one of the best fights I've ever seen. Both men knocked the other one down a number of times in the fight. It was just absolutely incredible, that fight. Matisse ended up getting the win, but John Molina was in with a real chance. It was a proper fight, that one. And top of the bill, the return of Demetrius Andrade. A lot of people say he's the best at 154, but we just haven't seen him for a long time. In that time, Lara has got better and better and picked up a title. So Demetrius Andrade fighting Willie Nelson. A lot of people saying this is a very close fight, especially with the ring rust that Andrade has. 22 wins and 0 losses for Andrade. He faces, of course, Willie Nelson, 25-2 with the one draw. This is going to be a good fight. I can't wait to see Andrade get back in that 154 picture. I'm not sure what was going on with the massive layoff. I don't know if he had an injury or something like that, but of course he lost his title because he was out so long. And we can't wait to see him get back in there with the likes of Lara or someone like that, because Andrade was an absolute beast. Now we're going to leave that card there. We're going to go over to the last card that we're going to mention on this week's show. Another really good card. Christopher Diaz, 16-0. He faces Neftali Campos, 11-1. That's going to be a good fight. That's an 8-rounder at featherweight. Good fight to Christopher Diaz. Julian Rodriguez, 12-0. He faces Kelvin Dotal. Now those two fights are probably the worst fights on the bill, even though they're good fights. Now, these 4 fights I've got for you now, good fights. Of course, this is happening at the MSG, Madison Square Garden. Zhu Shiming fighting in the USA. His record 7 wins, 1 loss. He faces Joseph Ajtai, 15-2. That's a 10-rounder at flyweight. Also on the bill, Mike Yes Indeed Reed. We had him on the show before. Really nice guy. 18-0. He faces Abraham Cordero. This is an 8-rounder at super lightweight. Mike Reed looking to move to 19-0. Felix Verdejo puts his WBO Latino lightweight title on the line against Juan Jose Martinez, 25-2. Felix Verdejo, 21-0. Felix Verdejo, really good fighter. Can't wait till he puts down the Latino lightweight title and moves for one of the world titles, because this guy really is special, Felix Verdejo. And the main event, top of the bill, Roman Martinez puts his WBO World Super Featherweight title. Roman Martinez, one of the bravest men in the business, 29 wins, 2 losses and 3 draws. He faces Vasyl Lomachenko, 5 wins, 1 loss. Unbelievable, isn't it? Vasyl Lomachenko is going to probably win this, and he's going to pick up his second world title in 7 fights. That's got to be a record. I don't know. I think that's got to be a record. I don't think that's ever been done before. Lomachenko with some good promoters behind him, by the way. Who do you see winning this one, Ayaz? I know that Roman Martinez has been around the block. He's been in some tough fights, but he's a real good fighter, and he comes to fight every single fight he's in, and he will put up a good account of himself. I don't care what anyone says. Do you reckon Lomachenko's going to go in there and do the business?
Yeah, I personally reckon Lomachenko will stop him.
Okay, yeah. Well, then that's a statement right there. And you know what? You're probably right. This will be his second world title in 2 weight divisions within 7 fights, which is quite remarkable. Okay, we're going to leave the preview part there. We're now going to welcome our second guest. Our next guest on this week's show is a former WBC World Heavyweight title challenger, boasting a record of 28 wins, 24 by knockout, and just 3 losses. It's none other than Gerry Cooney. Gerry, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be on your show. How's things going?
Very good, sir. Yourself?
You know, I'm glad to be on your show. I'm sorry for the reason we're on. Everything is great. I've been busy, and boxing is just doing great, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, we're on for a couple of different reasons. Obviously, we're going to start. This week is actually a special week for yourself. But just before we get into that, last week we of course had some awful news, not just in the heavyweight division, not just in the sporting world, but iconically, the great Muhammad Ali passed away. Gerry, what's your reaction to this tragic loss for all of us?
Well, it's a tragic loss. We can't recover from that kind of a loss. Listen, he was a great man. He was a great fighter. He was a great person. He never begrudged an autograph or a picture taking. He fought for all causes. And listen, he was the most cherished human being in the world. He's the most famous man in the world.
Do you have any sort of personal meetings? How many times have you met the guy? Is there any sort of story you've got from any of those at all?
Well, we've met many times. I remember watching him in an airport one time. He was walking down the corridor. He had sort of a glow to him. That's the kind of guy who was a magnet, and people drawn to him, and people loved him. And he was a great guy. I mean, listen, he stood up for what he believed in. He didn't go into the war. That's one hand. The other side is all the guys that did, they belong to America. We have to protect America. They went to war, and they lost their arms and their legs, and so we have to really take our hats off to them as well. But I met him the first time. I was probably 22 at the UN building in New York. There was a boxing convention, and he sat right next to me. And he was just such a great guy. He late years to come after that, he'd call my mother, let her know I'm doing okay. The fight's going to be fine. And he was just that kind of a guy, and I got to hit it off with him so well, like everybody. I thought it was just me. I invited him out to my house in the Hamptons. He agreed to come, and then I wound up, I was so young, 22. He had about 30 guys traveling with him. I didn't know what to do with him, so I wound up canceling the trip, and I regret that very deeply. But listen, fighters have a different rapport than everybody else. We're always pulling for each other. Fighting is a struggle. We come from difficult backgrounds. We got to fight our way out of it, and unfortunately, most guys don't end up saving any money. And unfortunately, in his case, he stayed too long and took shots from Frazier and Norton and Foreman that you can't take and survive. And unfortunately, Parkinson's took him over about 32 years ago.
Yeah, of course. But it's good that you've got a touching story like that to share. That's certainly something good to hold on to. A lot of people, of course, they're still going to be talking about this actual fight. That obviously it's a fantasy fight. The whole Muhammad Ali in his prime against Tyson in his prime. I've always been a strong believer that Ali would have, been the better man on the night. Do you share that view, Gerry, or have you got a different one?
Well, I was with Muhammad Ali one time, and he said, Mike Tyson is something, but he's not no Muhammad Ali. And, Muhammad Ali had a way. Listen, when we saw Muhammad Ali fighting George Foreman, I was praying, please, Ali, don't take this fight. Don't take this fight. He's going to kill you, along with everybody else. And he saw something we didn't see. That's how gifted he was. And he went in there and found a way to beat George Foreman, who was invincible at the time. So I'm pretty sure that he would have found a way to combat Mike Tyson and been victorious in that bout as well.
Now, getting on to a more positive topic, this week is your 34-year anniversary since challenging Larry Holmes for the WBC heavyweight title on June the 11th, 1982. We had Larry on our show a while back in February of this year. Tell us what you remember about that fight, Gerry.
Don't remind me of that fight. I don't want to remember that fight. Anyway, it was the greatest fight of the world in my life. I was given a chance for the heavyweight championship of the world. I knocked out Kenny Norton in 54 seconds in one round. And unfortunately, it was a period of time. It took 13 months for the fight to happen. And I started drinking heavily, and I believe it had a big effect in the fight. And but that being said, he was also the great champion, top 5 in the history of the game. I got to fight him and won 13 rounds with him. So we had a nice fight. I got dropped in the second round. I was jabbing with him in through the fight. I caught him with some great shots, and had a couple of points taken away for low blows. And he was pulling my head down, which Mills Lane couldn't see, and I got 3 points taken away for low blows, which kind of, with my lack of experience, instead of thinking to myself, let me go out and try and knock this guy out, I went out and thought, go ahead, you can hit me, you can't hurt me. So it was a dumb inexperience that happens to us. Don King owned all the heavyweights, and he wouldn't let me fight any of them because he didn't want me to get the experience so I could have an opportunity to be home. So as it turned out, I got stopped in the 13th round. I have a great life, a great family. I'm still in the game. I'm on Sirius XM radio every Monday, every Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. New York time, and life is great.
And I just want to talk about the promotion of that fight. I know that obviously in the build-up, you wasn't happy with the fact that it had sort of been promoted as like a black versus white thing. Don King obviously gave you that label, the Great White Hope. Who do you feel was to blame for that bad publicity surrounding that particular fight, Gerry?
Well, I got to tell you that obviously Don King was a master promoter, and he was trying to make much money as he could, regardless of what he was doing to the world and the country, and he made a lot of mistakes, and obviously, I did not let it bother me at all because I had 6 or 8 friends I grew up with who hung with me, and we just went to training camp and trained and got ready for the fight. But of course, Holmes got death threats, and things went on that was not really supposed to be in sports. And what happened to me was that the night of the fight, Mills Lane has Larry Holmes and me in the center of the ring, giving us instructions. And right before the bell rings, Larry Holmes looks at me and says, Gerry, let's have a good fight. And that's what boxing is about. And that was a great, commentary about 2 athletes going into fight and becoming the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that you maintained a good relationship with Larry. I just wanted to ask how things are at the moment and when the last time that you guys spoke was.
I can't stand him. I can't stand that guy. Actually, we get along great. We're always together. I was on when he was on last night. This morning we did a couple of television shows together about Muhammad Ali. So, listen, we're good friends. We're forever going to be held together from that fight in June 11th, 1982. And 34 years ago, I can't believe it. It's crazy. And we help each other a lot all year long. And to make other people's life a little easier and safer, it's a great thing to have between us two.
Yeah, definitely. That's exceptional. Now, of course, in your day, you could really punch. As mentioned earlier, 24 KOs in 28 wins. You fought some big punchers yourself. Who would you say hit the hardest, Gerry?
Well, I would say Foreman punched the hardest. I got caught with a good shot by him. And I heard him in the first round. I heard him. He talked about I was the biggest puncher he ever fought. A lot of guys did, but, he was the biggest puncher I fought. I mean, realistically, Ron Lyle could punch, but I didn't really get hit with him. And Foreman caught me with some great shots. But the best fighter I ever fought was Larry Holmes, bar none.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, so you sort of answered that in one there. Yeah, no, both good fights though all of them good fights. Are you in touch with the heavyweight division these days? And if so, who do you like to watch? I sure am.
I'm very excited for Anthony Joshua. He's been on our show a lot. We have a show in New York called Monday and Friday Night The Fights on Sirius XM 93 Rush, and he's been on our show. He's won the heavyweight championship of the world. He's getting better every day. We have Deontay Wilder, who's a great fighter in his own right. And I see that as a very big super fight coming down the road pretty soon. I mean, you got Tyson Fury. Obviously, he beat Klitschko, and he's going to fight him again. And I think what he did was he buffaloed Tyson Fury by fainting him all night. He's got a great trainer. I love his trainer. And so it's coming back. We got King Kong Bundy. We have a lot of guys building up the heavyweight division. It's been lacking for so long. We're on our way to a great heavyweight division.
I was going to ask you about Deontay Wilder. You just sort of said there, but I agree with you. That fight is one I'm really looking forward to. I hope that fight can materialise between Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. But the main man, we have to both agree on, surely. The main man, obviously, they say to beat a man, you've got to beat the man. Fury obviously beat the man in Klitschko. So right now, he's number one, in my opinion, certainly.
He's right. I don't know. I mean, he's the number one guy. He's got a great personality, although he's gone a little crazy lately. I hope he can calm himself down and get rid of some of that rhetoric, because he's got an opportunity to make some great money, make a name for himself, a big name, in the heavyweight division. He beat Klitschko, which is not an easy task to do, and he did it easily by fainting. He kept fainting and keeping Klitschko off balance. And I'm really proud of that for him. And he's got some big fights ahead of him, I hope. That some of the things he said about he doesn't like fighting and he's fat and all that shit. I hope he gets rid of that and stop talking about the gays and all that stuff, and let's get back to the main thing that's made him who he is the fight game.
Yeah, absolutely. It always says outlandish stuff, but it makes sense to him in some kind of way. It's all just mind games. You can never really take for granted anything he does say. Of course, you've got Irish in you as well. I wanted to ask, where does that come from in your family, Gerry?
It comes from Mayo, Kiltima in Mayo, in Ireland. And my father was also from Canada, so we got Canadian in me. So he was from St. John's, Newfoundland. And so it's all good, man. I got some good bloodlines, some great bloodlines.
Yeah, you do. Now, in April 2013, Tyson Fury had his first fight in America. It was against Steve Cunningham. This side of the river, Tyson was saying that he wanted you to walk him to the ring that night. Were you contacted about that? I just wanted to sort of get an answer out of it, because we never really heard anything.
I never got contacted about that, but listen, you got to love that guy. His outlandish remarks about some of the things, the women and the gays, I mean, that's not really cool for society, but listen, I'm in this corner. He's done a lot. He's done a lot for himself in the game. I hope he gets himself in better shape, and he can beat Klitschko this time. He's got to keep Klitschko outside and keep him off balance. And if he can do that, then we're going to have a great matchup between a lot of different guys in the heavyweight division.
So, like, not to sort of mark you on the spot as such, but if he were to fight in America down the line and he did call you, would you stay neutral, or would you walk him out if he insisted?
I would love to walk him out. I'd love to walk him out. Are you kidding me? He's an Irishman. He's my brother. He's somewhere we're related. I just can't get no money out of him. We're related, but I can't get no money out of him.
Okay, excellent. Right, Gerry, just before I let you go, I just wanted to give you a chance. Any kind of message for any of your UK fans that still show you support up until this day, sir?
Listen, I love UK. I met Henry Cooper. I fought in the United States team when I came to England in 1975. Henry Cooper met us at the airport. Got to meet with Lennox Lewis, all the guys. I love it there. Great fighters in the UK, and I love the game there. Great, talented guys.
Excellent stuff. On behalf of all those guys, I thank you very much. Listen, Gerry, I just want to say from myself, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. It's really good to talk to a genuine gentleman, and of course, someone that's done a lot for the sport. I really, really appreciate you giving us a bit of time this week, sir.
Love you, brother. Thank you so much. Call me anytime.
Okay, now it's time to conclude episode 36 of the Boxhard podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. A massive thank you, as always, to our two guests that took part on this week's show. It was a pleasure to speak to Cassius Chaney, named after the great man himself, and it was a pleasure as well to speak to Gerry Cooney, who had some fantastic stories with Muhammad Ali personally, so that was really great to hear. This show, of course, is another show that we're going to thank the fans for listening to. It's been an emotional one, to be totally honest. We've had some interviews that people have gone into and they've gone quite deep on their stories, and we've had some touching moments on this podcast, but this really is the saddest one by far. We've lost an absolute legend of not just the sport, but of the world. So I just want to say thank you very much for listening to this week's show, a very heartfelt show. Thank you for sharing, liking, following, tweeting and favoriting. And there's no other way to end it than to say, Muhammad Ali, rest in peace, my brother.